Hello, welcome to the Hope Unlocked podcast. I'm Kristin Kurtz, your host. I pray this episode is like a holy IV of hope for your soul. Please help me welcome Jenny Joy to the show. I am just so excited to have her here. She is such a dear friend who I met through ministry that we both were trained up in back in 2018 and happened to live very close to each other, and would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself with our listeners today.
I can't believe we've known each other that long. It just seems crazy. But I am a lover of Jesus. I am a single mom of a almost 27-year-old young man. I have a calling on my life to disciple men and believe in the goodness that God has in and for each and every one of them. And to restore the hearts of men to the mother heart of God is the true call on my life. And so I'm in a season of pressing into that place and believing it to be true in my career and also in my personal life, seeking after my future husband and walking that out with the Lord.
So what does that look like right now with your calling? How are you walking that out currently?
Well, I have basically fallen into this opportunity that the Lord dreamt up for me, where I'm working for a couple of very godly men who have a small business that's a specialty contracting business. And their dream is to get it really strong and sound and then expand it to other cities around the country. Mm-hmm. And they hired me to basically come in and mentor the men that work there and help them believe that they could do something like that, own their own business, be strong leaders in their community, like just believing who they are above and beyond even their job. And it's a blessing to work for people who have such insight and just passion that people are created for more than just the work of their hands and to make money for a company. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how, I know you've shared a little bit of the story of how it came to be, but maybe if you could back it up a little bit, how even this whole process came to be, what you were doing prior to this particular career path that you're in right now.
Well, how far back do you want me to go?
Far back as you would like.
Okay. Well, I have had the unique opportunity of being a woman in construction for the last 20 years. And I have built everything from $100 million like masterpiece buildings at the University of Minnesota, all the way down to tiny doctors and dentist offices. And so I have had the Lord give me such favor and such grace to be able to walk out an amazing career. And then in 2018, right before I met Kristin, I actually had the opportunity to leave my job as the president of a small general contractor and build an addition onto my church, and was able to do that for a couple of years, walked that out during the 2020 season. So had a really unique opportunity there to be both in ministry and in construction at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then walked away from that season understanding that like my calling, my assignment was changing. My calling remained the same, but my calling was changing from being a builder of buildings to being a builder of men. And so this opportunity is really like a training ground for me to walk into this coaching of men as a full-time season of life versus just kind of part of what I did as I was building buildings.
Yeah. So when you left your job as being the president, or career as being the president of that company, what was it like leaving, and what did that look like for you, kind of that transition? I know that you've shared with me, but I think it would be amazing if you're open to sharing a little bit more about that time frame.
Absolutely. So it was I had an absolute knowing from the Lord that I was supposed to be leaving in that time. It was actually like a prophetic utterance out of my mouth that I'd never even thought of in conversation with an elder from church, where he just said, like, what do you want to do to help us with this? Is there anything you can do to help us with this expansion? And I just said, I'd love to leave my job and build the church. And I'd never thought about it before in my entire life. But in that moment, like, it was such a deep feeling. Like, it wasn't just like a feeling in my body. It was a feeling in my spirit. Like, I knew that was the path I was supposed to be taking. And so I put in my notice. I left my job 2 months later. So it was May 18th of 2018 was my first day out on my own, doing my own thing, and pursued getting the church project started. And it actually got put on hold for about 9 months. And that season of being on hold and not having a job and not having financial provision that was steady, not having like all the tangible things that you hold on to in the world that you want to control and that you take as your comfort, like all of that kind of fell away. I was the only breadwinner for my family. I had a son in high school at that point in time. Nope, he was graduating from high school. I had a house and a car payment and a dog and like responsibilities, right? And so it really was this process of trusting the Lord in a way that I never thought I could. And it was also a grieving season because the Lord had put me in the place of leadership at that construction company. It was a very clear step and move in my life, following the Lord into that place. And there were so many promises over that season of life that didn't come to completion. And I had to reconcile it with the Lord. And he really called me in that time of not working, to process and deal with and heal from the disappointment of what felt like incomplete dreams and ideas and promises around that assignment.
Wow. So if you, this first season is called Voices of Hope from the Valley, would you consider that to be maybe one of the most prominent, I would say prominent Valley seasons in your life? I had a friend from Hawaii say, the Valley actually has lush fruits. And I thought, wow, never thought of it like that. Because
right.
The Valley can really feel like a wilderness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what did hope look like for you in those 9 months? And you said 9 months. I'm like, oh, she's birthing something.
Right. I think that hope looked legitimately like leaning on the Lord and not my own understanding. Like putting down my skills and my ability and my own strength, because there was nothing I could do. Like, I couldn't will myself out of that place. I knew I wasn't supposed to take another job. I knew that what I was doing this was a season for me. And so that is how we ended up meeting, was I was trying to get well and get into some wellness practices. And so, we were in ministry together, chasing after wellness that was directed at the Lord, right? And that brought me a ton of hope and freedom and unlocked some things in me that had been dormant for a long time, including joy, which is why joy is added to my name now. Because I remembered I loved to dance. I remembered I loved to move my body. I remembered that no matter what things looked like in the day-to-day life and the reality, quote unquote, of my situation and my circumstance, that God had a bigger plan for me and a better plan for me, and something that I could never imagine or make happen on my own through my own strength. And it freed me from this heavy burden I'd carried for a long time of finding my worth in my work.
Yeah.
And it unlocked a place where I can now, I just walked out another season of not working for like 9 months.
Was
It was 9. Yeah. In its own way.
Yeah.
And it was a completely different experience than the first time.
Yeah. Maybe tell us a little bit more what that looked like with your second birth.
Yeah. So my first season, it was painful and hard, and I didn't understand the letting go part. And so I did a lot of fighting against the Lord and being upset and mad at the way things were turning out because they weren't meeting my expectation. And in this second season, I did the same thing, but it was lesser. And I caught it faster. That place of where my own expectation was actually stealing from me and putting me in a place where I was unable to receive the rest and the refreshing that the Lord was trying to give me freely and pour out over me. And it took about 6 out of the 9 months for me to get broken enough to see what the Lord was up to. Maybe it was 5, but it doesn't matter. It was painful and it was hard. And I really thought I was walking out this season of rest because I was like spending time with friends and having fun and going on trips and taking fun drives and adventures. And what I was doing was awesome. And in the moment, it was life-giving, but it wasn't the place where the Lord was calling to my soul to come into rest, to like lay under the broom tree and let him refresh me and feed me and mend my body and mend my heart and my soul in places that it had been beat up and bruised in the process of the last season. And so I did finally get to that point, and I took several weeks to just sleep, quite literally, physically sleep, and eat, and then go back to bed and repeat cycle of napping and maybe going for a walk, but not being social, not engaging in community activities and things that are actually normally life-giving to me. Like the Lord kind of called me into seclusion. And it was a beautiful place of actually learning that there's more to the Lord and what he's trying to give us, like a depth of rest and a depth of care that I was still trying to care for myself. I was still trying to like do all the right things. And, even though it was lesser and it wasn't work driven, it was self-care driven in a way that really wasn't what the Lord had intended for me. And so even though it looked completely different, it was this season of now I've learned a new level of depth in myself, in relationship with the Lord, in intimacy with the Lord, in trust that it's okay if I need to sleep. It's okay if I need to pull away and take time away from my community, whether it's church or friends or family, and get a deep refreshing that you can't find when you're on the move.
Yeah. Wow. So as you've gone back into, your career now, as I love that men is within mentor, not saying that mentoring women is any different, but it actually, I'm sure it is, but mentoring the men, like you're building up men. How are you able to, I mean, I just see how this has impacted you so much. How are you able to infuse this into the men that you're working with, the things that you've learned along the way? Because like you said, you are, you're breaking chains, first of all, just as who you are, but you're a woman in kind of a man's world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How that, all of the experiences that you've gone through, as a woman of God, how that translates into your career now.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I'm able to do or bring to the table now is the lens to see how men also are very driven by finding their worth through their work, and being able to see that and appreciate it and call it out as something beautiful, like the work of your hands is valuable. The Lord doesn't want us just laying around on the couch all day, every day. But also to remind them that rest is necessary. And so even though we have a job that you have to show up and be physically present for, there is an expectation that you are planning and dreaming towards your next vacation, your next paid time away, that your children are important. If you need to take time off, like, I want you to use the benefit of paid time off to its fullest. I don't want it to accumulate into this big mountain because you're just here working, striving. Like, you can be valuable and important and a key member of our team, and you can walk away and go get refreshed and renewed and restored and come back actually stronger.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's that place of not allowing people to put off what needs to be tended to today. And I feel like the Lord has given me a keen eye to see that and to speak life into that place of, reminding people of the value of the refreshment.
Yeah. Now, is that kind of a counter message for them since you've come in, or is this kind of a new message? Or like, I would love to hear kind of their response to how you approach this, because at least for me in workplaces that I've been part of, it's a very grind, push as hard as you can, even though there's a message of work-life balance. It's really like your balance needs to be at work, not in your
right.
life. So I'd love to hear.
It is.
Are you kind of coming in with a new message, a new thing within the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is a new thing, and it is countercultural, and people aren't sure that they can trust it at first. Mm-hmm. And so I've always had to do this as a woman in a man's role in construction. Like, I've always had to get down in the dirt and show who I am to earn the trust from my team every time, every job I've ever taken. And so I have taken time with my team to get to know them, to get dirty with them, to go to the job site, to look at their work and praise their work, and also bring constructive feedback to how they could do their jobs better. I've also taken the time to get to know them and their families and their girlfriends and their situations, and to ask about their children, and to ask about, the different people that are in their lives outside of work, and to prove to them that my actions also follow my words. It's great to talk about stuff, but if you don't back that up with skin in the game, saying like, no, I get it. I want to live this way too. And so I'm in the process right now. Like, today is a Monday and I am not working because I know I am working best on a 4-day work week. Yeah. And so I am showing my guys by leading at the front, saying, I need to care for myself. I'm working 4 days a week. How do you need to care for yourself? Yeah. Could we look at your schedule and see how to adjust it? Are there days that you work better than others? Like, our workplace can be as flexible as it needs to be if that's what's needed for people. It doesn't have to be a grind. And I actually believe wholeheartedly, both because of my experience with the Lord and then my own personal experience in reality, like, that if I can work harder in less time if I am well rested and I'm well cared for. Amen. Yeah. And so I'm trying to put that to work every day, both in my own life and then bring them with me on the journey of believing it to be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is that? Do you have an example of maybe somebody that you've been mentoring that, this has really impacted in their life and work? Yeah, well, probably a couple, but the one that sticks out the most when you ask that question is I have a young man on my team. He's actually getting ready to transition to college. And he's in a season of transition, which we all know is hard, right? And it makes everything feel heavier. You're trying to balance lots of moving targets. And he just came to me
a few weeks ago and said, Jenny, I'm either going to have to leave my job or I need to work less. Like I need a lesser day schedule. I need more time away from work. And I was like, okay, how about if you work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you have basically a long weekend? You know, you got Thursday, Friday, and your weekend off. We could totally make that work. No problem. And he was like, are you serious? Because I was like ready to give my 2 weeks notice today. And I'm like, we can of course make that work. Like I'm not here just talking about this stuff. I want to make it happen. So he's been working a 3-day work week now for 2 weeks, and it's going super well. And I have asked him if he would take up an extra job, you know, in one of his days off just to see if he wanted the hours. And he was like, no, I can't. And I'm like, okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. And, you know, we worked it out a different way. So that's one very tangible place where I've seen it, because this is a field technician. And then I've also seen it in my boss, in the place of like, he went on vacation and he never heard from me. Like I ran everything every day and was able to handle it. And when he came back, I updated him with the things that he needed to know, but there was no need for him to check his email or get involved in the day to day. And he came back and he's like, I've never had a vacation and not had to do something with work.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's just that place of like honoring people and their need for rest and their time and meaning it.
Yeah. So for those who hear rest, I'm just imagining that some people are just thinking like, you know, just go take a nap. And but what does like deep rest in the Lord look like for you? Like, how could you maybe explain that? Maybe give some examples of even how you're resting in the work. Are you bringing it into the workplace, like tangibly, you know, taking a walk at work, like, you know, just examples. That's what I did when I was in corporate. What does that look like for you, both at work and outside of work?
So at work, I think at work for me looks like remembering that the things that I need to be working on are the things that the Lord is calling me to. It's not everything, because everything and anything could need me all the time. But there are certain things that only I can do, and there are certain things that only need attention right now. And everything else that feels urgent or has put on, you know, emergency effects, like they're not, it's a lot of times like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. And so the place of slowing down and looking and asking either the Lord or even myself, like, is this really the thing right now? And just taking a 20-second pause to like regroup before diving into a problem, emergency, quote unquote, you know, like being really clear, like, is this the thing for this moment? Or is this thing trying to steal or distract me away from the thing? Because walking in that flow of what the Lord is asking us to do in this moment, like, it is a disruptor. It will steal every ounce of rest. It will steal every ounce of strength. And you'll be fighting a fire that you can't put out. And that's exhausting.
So
learning,
that's a little bit
sorry,
in relation to boundaries too, even within your position there.
Absolutely. Yes. Kristin, you already know this, but I'm like hardcore for boundaries.
So what would that mean to somebody? Like, I feel like there's somebody that has a job that has no boundaries that may get some insight from you on that, what that looks like.
I do think most people's jobs have no boundaries, and most people's lives have no boundaries. And so I believe a lot of people do need to know that it's not unchristlike to have boundaries. it's actually really necessary to stay on the path that the Lord has called us to boundary our time and our hearts and our lives from the things that are not what God has for us. And so I have like all of my notifications turned off on my phone. I don't check my work email. I mean, to the best of my ability, every once in a while, just out of habit, I'll catch myself checking my work email. So, it happens, but I don't allow it to have a place of importance in my life. My team, they know when I'm off. I very clearly communicate my boundaries and will tell them like, hey, I'm not working today if they text me, and I'll tell them who they should talk to. So I work very hard to establish like when I am available and when I'm not. But that lies outside of the realm of care. Like I care for you. And if you need something out of those hours and it's appropriate, I will engage. Of course, I'm not going to just like ignore you, but it's a matter then of self-discipline to know the difference. And to be willing to say like, nope, I'm not going to respond to that right now. It can wait till tomorrow. That person does not need my time or my energy or my attention in this very moment, but I will get to them when it's appropriate. And so I think communication and clarity is kindness. And that leads us to a place where people know our boundaries and then know that we're going to keep them and hold them. The expectation has been set and they have an understanding. And then when they try to cross it and we don't respond, it reinforces the fact that, no, we're going to stay on this side of that boundary. So my best example of this, Kristin, is Monday, when I was not this last Monday, every Monday, when I was working at the church, Monday was our day off, and it's the busiest day of construction. And so I was building a building and running ministry at the church. And so I always worked Sundays, and Monday was our day off. And so there was this temptation to work a 5-day construction work week and a Sunday of church. And the Lord made it really clear to me that Mondays, that was the Sabbath. That's the day off. That is the day of rest for me. And so I had to ask the Lord what that looked like, because I didn't even know in that season. And for me, the place that it was getting in my car, just myself alone, and driving wherever the Lord led me. So Monday Meanderings is what he named it. And it was birthed out of that season of needing to be away from work, but to be spending focused and quality time with the Lord. So I would pray and I would worship and I would rest. And I would go to all these fun places and like have these little adventures and see things I didn't even know existed, because God would like whisper places for me to visit or turn by turn directions on where to go and certain times to be in places that I didn't understand, and to like intercede and pray over cities and pray over our judicial system and like pray over the land, and like all of these things that I didn't even know was a part of who I was, like came to life in this place of intimacy with the Lord when I dedicated my Mondays to him. And so now I am in the same place of reestablishing Mondays, and it's going to look completely different. It may or may not be Monday Meanderings, but it's also a new day of rest for me. And what does that look like?
Wow. So could you maybe share like one of your favorite adventures on your Monday Meanderings with us?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are so many. I can't even start. So many. But I think one of the most fun ones was I woke up one morning. So the pattern for me was I wouldn't pray ahead, because people always asked on Sunday at church, like, hey, where are you going for your Monday meandering? And my answer was always, I don't know. I never know till Monday. So I'd wake up Monday morning. I basically thank the Lord for the day and ask like, where were we going today? And like, sometimes I'd get a really specific location. Sometimes it'd be turn by turn, like just hop in your car and start on your way and we'll get there. But I woke up one morning and I heard pipestone. And I don't know what pipestone even is. I didn't even know it's a place in Minnesota. So I like just felt like I was supposed to hop in my car and the Lord was going to talk to me about Pipestone. And so I hopped in my car, felt like I was supposed to head towards New Ulm. So I get in my car, drive to New Ulm, get out, fill up my car with gas, like get some coffee from the gas station. And I'm just like, all right, Lord, like, is this it? Is there something about Pipestone here? Like, what's Pipestone? And he was like, no, Google Pipestone. So I did, and it's a city in Minnesota. And it literally is a place where a particular type of stone and or clay was mined from the earth, and used by the Native Americans, by like all kinds of people over all the generations, because it was a really sound, I don't want to say necessarily building material. They used it for streets. They used it for like just all kinds of random stuff. Beside the point, I drove there and there's a state park there, which I had no idea about, but I drove exactly there to the state park, turn by turn with the Lord, like some gravel roads and some fun stuff in between. And I get there and there's like a walking path through this park. And it's 2020, so there's nobody working there. Like the whole place is shut down, but you could still get out and walk. And I was like, no joke, the only car in the parking lot. And I get out and I go on this walking path and I'm just literally meandering through the walking paths. No idea where I'm going. Go kind of on a couple of these dead ends, go back, end up at this waterfall in the middle of nowhere in Pipestone, Minnesota. And it's epic. You can like climb up it and look down over the waterfall from the top. There's like this little babbling brook and there's all these beautiful wildflowers and it's lush and it's green and it's beautiful. And I'm just like, what?
Wow.
And it was so amazing. And there were all these butterflies and all of these dragonflies and just, it was just gorgeous by nature, but also just this place of feeling like the Lord saw me and knew about my love of the land and my love of, his creation, and was just like this fire within me just kept burning in the place of, I feel so connected with the Lord when I'm in creation, and it was awesome. And I got in my car and I drove home and took some side roads and saw a guy on a bike on a like a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and like just this fun, beautiful, all of it was beauty, right? Like everything that the Lord has made is beautiful. And it absolutely filled me to overflowing.
That's incredible. Like as you're even talking, you're on this journey, right? It kind of reminds me of, part of the premise of this podcast is, those of us who keep going, we keep standing, we keep moving, despite the challenges and the trials. And, you're led on this journey, you're led on these trails, and you didn't even know that there was this whole lush waterfall and butterflies and wildflowers and all of this beauty, but you had to keep walking, you had to keep going, you had to keep following him and his voice to actually get there. I just feel like that is so prophetic in what maybe many of us are still on that trail right now. We're like, where is this waterfall? We have to keep this for him, and resting, and just all the things that you've shared today, they encompass so much of many of us on this journey where we're still not at that waterfall yet. Maybe we've got this big dream, we've got this big maybe a mandate from the Lord, and we just don't see it all yet,
Mm-hmm.
So as you're currently on this journey, how are you seeing him in all the details, like just even in your everyday? Because I know that that's a huge part for me to stay anchored, is to see him in all the details, to try to see him even when it looks hard, even when it looks bleak. What might that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's the place of understanding that walking out our faith requires us to be involved and engaged and attentive and with our eyes locked on the Lord. The little details and the very minor changes in what we're doing versus what the Lord is asking us to do, and like to be diligent in those things, really is where a drastic change comes. Like a minor pressing in on something that feels really out of whack can completely shift the way you look at it. And my example to that would be, even though I was saying like I love my job, I do. It's been a really hard transition from building buildings to building people. Like it's just different. And it's been a lot of really coming to terms with the fact that I don't know what I'm doing here, and it's trial and error, and it's trusting the Lord. And I got a reminder from the Lord probably 2.5 weeks now ago, that he's not asking me to do this as a short-term project. And I'd kind of put it in that category in my mind. So, when we have a short-term project, it's like you can muscle through anything, right? You can do anything short-term. And the Lord was basically telling me like, no, you're going to be here for at least 3 years. So settle in and trust me, and put this stuff down that you're trying to power through in your own strength. Like, give it to me. And so having that reminder and that really clear communication, it like took so much weight off my shoulders, because it's like, oh, I'm not in a hurry. God's not in a hurry. There's a lot to do here, but I'm going to have to get deep, and I'm going to have to give it to the Lord and use his strength to get through it. And it was like it lightened my entire burden, because I chose to not carry it on my own anymore. Like I gave it to the Lord, and I was like, okay, 3 years, got it. 3 years. That's not something you carry on your own. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible, my friend. I am just like, it's been such a joy to like walk alongside you and see your journey. And I'm just so thankful for just everything you've shared and imparted with us today. This time has gone by really fast. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Just maybe a word over the women who are listening today, maybe even a prayer over us today. Would absolutely love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like the Lord is breathing life into the desert, into the places that have felt dead and dry, into the places that have felt sun scorched and like eroded, and that those things are turning into a lush place. And so I just pray that each of us would take the time and space to slow down, allow the Lord to whisper exactly what it is that we need in this season, and to trust him that what he is giving us is just what we need. And so I just bless the slowing down and the pausing to wait on the words of the Lord to settle in your heart, to settle in your ears, to be made clear in your vision, and that we would put our hands out to allow him to take and to place in our hands everything that we need and the things that we don't. And I just think from that surrendered place of stillness and time, that he's going to breathe life and refreshing and fullness over every promise that he's made us. And so I just bless each and every one who's listening in Jesus' name.
Thank you. Well, you are another brave voice who sets others free. So thank you for sharing today. I'm going to close with our anchoring verse over the podcast. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope. And that's Romans 15:13. Thank you, Jenny, for being on with us today. We will see you back next week. Thanks so much.